The executor of Dean Martin's estate was going through financial records 3 months after Dean died. It was March 1996. Dean had passed away on Christmas Day, 1995. The executor's job was to catalog assets, settle debts, prepare documents for probate court. That's when he found the boxes. 3 cardboard boxes in Dean's home office, labeled simply Donations. Inside were copies of checks, receipts, records of wire transfers, all spanning from the early 1960s to 1995, 35 years of documentation. The executor started adding up the numbers, 10,000 here, 25,000 there, monthly checks of 5,000, larger donations of 100,000, all made through third parties, all anonymous, all with instructions that Dean's name never be mentioned. When the executor finished calculating, he sat back in shock. Over his entire adult life, Dean Martin had donated more than $1 million to charity, and he'd done it all in complete secrecy. No press releases, no charity galas with his name on the wall, no tax deductions, just quiet, consistent giving that nobody knew about until after he died. The executor called Dean's children. "Did you know your father was doing this?" They had no idea. Dean had never mentioned it, not once in 35 years. Over the following months, as the estate contacted the charities to verify the donations, something remarkable happened. Charities that had been receiving anonymous donations for decades suddenly learned who their mystery donor had been. St. Jude Children's Research Hospital in Memphis, Tennessee, had received over $100,000 from anonymous donor number 47 since 1967. That was Dean. A children's cancer ward in Los Angeles had received $5,000 every single month for 23 years. That was Dean, too. A fund that helped struggling entertainers from the Rat Pack era pay medical bills. Dean had funded the entire thing. Dean Martin had given away over $1 million in his lifetime, and the only reason anyone found out was because death forced his secret into the open. To understand the scale of what Dean Martin did, you need to look at each charity individually. The boxes in his home office told stories that Dean never wanted anyone to know. The first major donation the executor found was to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital in Memphis, Tennessee. In 1967, Dean wrote a check for $100,000. In 1967, that was an enormous sum. Adjusted for inflation, it would be worth over $800,000 today. But Dean didn't write the check himself. He had his lawyer write it. The donation was listed as coming from anonymous donor number 47. Dean's instructions to his lawyer were clear. His name must never be revealed. St. Jude could never know who gave the money. St. Jude accepted the donation gratefully. They assigned it a donor number for their internal records, number 47. They had no idea who this generous person was. They tried to find out, sent letters to the law firm asking if they could thank the donor personally. The law firm always refused. Those were the donor's wishes, complete anonymity. Over the years, St. Jude would occasionally receive additional donations from anonymous donor number 47, smaller amounts, 20,000 here, 30,000 there, all through the same law firm, all with the same instructions: never reveal the donor's identity. By the time Dean died in 1995, he had given St. Jude approximately $300,000 over 28 years, and St. Jude never knew who he was. When the executor contacted St. Jude in 1996 to verify the donations, the hospital staff was stunned. Anonymous donor 47 was Dean Martin, the entertainer? We had no idea. But the St. Jude donations were just the beginning. The second major category of giving the executor found was even more systematic. Starting in January 1968, Dean began sending $5,000 every month to the Children's Cancer Ward at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles.
$5,000 every single month for 27 years until he died. Do the math. $5,000 times 12 months equals $60,000 per year, times 27 years equals $1,620,000 from Dean Martin to one children's cancer ward, all anonymous, all through the same law firm that handled the St. Jude donations. The doctors at Cedars-Sinai Children's Cancer Ward knew about the monthly donations. They'd been receiving them for nearly 3 decades. They'd tried to find out who was sending the money. They wanted to thank this person, to honor them, to put up a plaque. But the law firm never revealed the source. Those were the instructions: complete anonymity. The hospital staff would sometimes joke about it. Anonymous must be the richest, most generous person in Los Angeles. Whoever they are, they've been keeping this ward running for almost 30 years. They had no idea it was Dean Martin, the singer who performed in Las Vegas, the actor who made movies, the Rat Pack member who seemed to live a life of glamour and excess. That guy was quietly sending $60,000 a year to a children's cancer ward and never telling anyone. When the Cedars-Sinai administrators learned in 1996 that their anonymous monthly donor had been Dean Martin, they wanted to honor him publicly, hold a memorial, name something after him. But Dean's estate made it clear. Dean gave anonymously for a reason. He wouldn't have wanted public recognition even after his death. So Cedars-Sinai honored his wishes. They added his name to an internal donor memorial. They wrote private letters to his children, but they didn't hold press conferences. They didn't issue press releases. They respected Dean's desire for privacy, even in death. The third major category of giving surprised even Dean's closest friends. Dean had established and fully funded a private charitable fund that helped struggling entertainers from the Rat Pack era. This wasn't a formal foundation. It wasn't registered anywhere. It was just Dean working with a trusted accountant, identifying performers from the 1950s and 1960s who were having financial difficulties, medical bills they couldn't pay, rent they couldn't afford, debts they couldn't manage. Dean would have his accountant send anonymous checks, sometimes $5,000, sometimes $10,000, sometimes more, whatever the person needed. The recipients had no idea where the money came from. They just receive a check in the mail from a private charitable fund. No name attached, no return address, just help when they needed it most. Over 25 years, Dean spent approximately $200,000 helping struggling entertainers, people he'd worked with, people he'd never met but heard were in trouble, all anonymous, all through his accountant, all documented in those boxes in his home office. When Dean's estate started verifying these donations, some of the recipients were still alive. They finally learned, decades later, that Dean Martin had been the anonymous donor who'd helped them when they were desperate.
One aging singer from the 1960s broke down crying when he found out. "I thought I was going to lose my house in 1982. I couldn't pay my mortgage. I was going to be homeless. Then I got a check for $15,000 from a private charitable fund. I never knew who sent it. Now I find out it was Dean Martin, a man I met once in 1964. He saved my life, and I never got to thank him." That was exactly how Dean wanted it, to help people, to save lives when he could, all without recognition, all without thanks, just quiet, consistent generosity that nobody knew about. But perhaps the most revealing aspect of Dean's giving was what he didn't do. He didn't take tax deductions. Dean's accountant had tried for years to convince him to claim his charitable donations on his tax returns. It was completely legal, completely normal. Every wealthy person in America took charitable deductions. It was how the tax system worked. But Dean refused. Year after year, his accountant would prepare his tax return and say, "Dean, you gave $200,000 to charity this year. If you claim these deductions, you'll save at least $70,000 in taxes." And year after year, Dean would say no.
Why? His accountant would ask, frustrated. It's legal. It's smart financial planning. Everyone does it. Because if I claim them, they become public record, Dean explained. People find out. The charities find out. They want to thank me. They want to put my name on things. I don't want that. I want to give because it's right, not because I get something back. Dean deliberately chose to pay more taxes than he had to, chose to give up hundreds of thousands of dollars in legitimate tax savings, all to maintain his privacy, all to keep his giving truly anonymous. When the executor calculated how much money Dean had lost by not taking charitable deductions over 35 years, the number was staggering, probably close to $400,000 in additional taxes paid, money Dean could have kept if he'd just claimed his donations. But Dean didn't care about the money. He cared about the principle. True charity is anonymous. True giving expects nothing in return, not recognition, not thanks, not even tax deductions. The total of Dean's lifetime charitable giving, as documented in those 3 boxes in his home office, exceeded $1 million. $1 million in actual donations, plus another $400,000 in tax deductions refused. Dean had effectively given away $1.4 million to charity over his lifetime. For context, in the 1960s and 1970s, when Dean was doing most of this giving, he was earning approximately $2 million per year at his peak. So he was giving away roughly 10% of his income to charity every year for decades, all anonymously. Dean's children were shocked when they learned about their father's secret charity. "We had no idea," his daughter Deanna said. "Dad never talked about this stuff. He was so private. He didn't want attention. He didn't want recognition. He just wanted to help people quietly." Dean's son Richie said, "That was Dad. He'd rather do something good and have nobody know than do something good and get credit for it. He thought charity should be private, between you and the people you're helping, not a public performance."
In the months following the revelation of Dean's charitable giving, a few charities tried to honor him publicly. St. Jude wanted to name a research wing after him. Cedars-Sinai wanted to put his name on the children's cancer ward. Other organizations wanted to hold memorial fundraisers in his honor. Dean's estate politely declined all of these offers. Dean had given anonymously for 35 years. Revealing his identity after death was unavoidable because of probate requirements, but exploiting that revelation for publicity would have gone against everything Dean believed about charity. So the charities honored Dean privately. Internal memorials, letters to his family, quiet gratitude, exactly the way Dean would have wanted it. The story of Dean Martin's secret charity only became public because journalists covering the estate probate noticed the unusual charitable giving in the court documents. By 1997, stories started appearing in newspapers. Dean Martin's secret, over $1 million to charity. The public was surprised. Dean Martin had always been known as the cool, casual performer, the guy with the drink, the lovable drunk who didn't seem to take anything seriously. Nobody knew about this other side of Dean, the side that gave away over $1 million to help children with cancer, to support medical research, to help struggling performers who'd fallen on hard times. Frank Sinatra, Dean's friend and Rat Pack partner, was asked about Dean's charity after the news broke. Frank said, "That was Dean. He never wanted attention, never wanted credit. He'd help you if you needed it, but he'd never tell anyone he did. That's the difference between doing good and doing good for show. Dean always chose to do good quietly." The lesson of Dean Martin's secret charity isn't just about generosity. It's about the difference between giving for recognition and giving because it's right. In the modern world, charitable giving is often performative. Celebrities announce donations, companies publicize their charitable programs, wealthy people get their names on buildings. Dean Martin took a different approach. He gave more than $1 million over his lifetime. He refused tax deductions to maintain absolute privacy.
He never told his own children what he was doing, and he structured everything so that his identity would remain secret even from the charities receiving his money. That's not normal. That's extraordinary. That's giving purely for the sake of giving, with no expectation of return, no hope for recognition, no desire for thanks, just the quiet satisfaction of helping people who needed help. When Dean Martin died on Christmas Day, 1995, the public remembered him as an entertainer, a singer, a member of the Rat Pack, a cool guy who made it all look easy. But the 3 boxes in his home office told a different story. They told the story of a man who gave away over $1 million in secret, who helped children with cancer for 27 years, who supported medical research for 30 years, who rescued struggling entertainers for 25 years, all without recognition, all without thanks, all because it was the right thing to do. If this story of true anonymous charity moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. Share this video with anyone who needs to understand what real giving looks like. Leave a comment about a time you helped someone anonymously, and ring that notification bell for more incredible untold stories about people who understood that the best good deeds are the ones nobody knows about.